To script or not to script? That is the question on deck today. When it comes to sales effectiveness, do scripts help? Or do they take away your team's ability to stay present and creative in sales conversations with your customers, turning your sales conversations into monotone, one-way dialogues that nobody likes? Tune in for this episode of Sales Fiction, where I take on the question to script or not to script and share some key things you need to do to make sure your scripts are working for you if you decide to use them. Welcome to Sales Fiction, a podcast that helps small sales teams get big results. I'm your host, Christy Lawrence, the founder of Mighty Sales and a longtime sales professional who traded my corporate sales career to help small but mighty teams do more with less. Each week on this podcast, we separate sales fact from sales fiction so that you can hyper-focus your effort on the skills, strategies, and tools that will have the biggest impact on your bottom line. Let's dive right in. My very first true sales job was in medical sales. Let me tell you, it was a challenge because I don't have a science brain, or at least I haven't developed my science brain if we go back to our conversations on growth mindsets. But I had to learn a lot of complex science about the medications I was going to sell and the disease states that those medications treated, which was way outside my comfort zone. I think in college, the only science class I took was food science, human nutrition, and geology. They weren't necessarily helping to prep me for this job. Luckily, I was working for a big company that had a tremendous amount of training resources invested in everyone that they were bringing on board. And not only did I have to read huge medical textbooks on the disease states and learn a lot before I went to live training, I was tested on that information. And if you got an 80% or less on your test, you no longer had a job. So the stakes were high, and they got higher once you got to live training. Once live training started, you were given scripts of information related to your product statements, your benefits, how to overcome certain challenges, objections, questions doctors had. And I was required to memorize word for word what those scripts were. And not only was I required to memorize them, but I was tested on this memorization in a live video role play, where if you didn't pass the live video role play, you were sent home and no longer had a job. And this was after you'd spent 6 weeks training, quit your other job. So there's a lot of pressure. But here's what I have to say about it. I didn't love it. I felt like maybe that's not how I would say something. Maybe that's not how I would approach it. But when I look back on that experience, if I'm being honest with myself, after that training was the time when I had the greatest confidence and product knowledge of anything that I ever sold. So I might not have liked it much, but it did work. Now, I want to say if you have a small team and you need to produce big results with limited resources, you're probably not going to have the bandwidth to put every single team member through this type of rigorous product knowledge or sales training. But that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities to help them be more successful using some of the same principles. And one of those principles is using scripts. So you can probably tell by now that my vote in the script or not to script conversation comes down in favor of scripts. It's not that clear cut, but fundamentally, yes, scripts are essential if you want your team to be successful. And a lot of your team members and salespeople are going to push back on this, because they don't want to feel like what they're doing is a one-size-fits-all approach. They want to feel like they have creative liberties in the conversations they have with their customers. And they want to feel like they can adapt into the moment to what's being said and what's happening versus following a structured regimen that's going to take them away from being present and ultimately potentially feel like it might be hindering them from success. These are valid concerns. There are definitely risks in using scripts. That's why I say it's not that clear cut. And we're going to talk more about that as we dive in to this topic. But fundamentally, scripts can make a huge difference in your ability to be successful. The real question isn't just, should I use a script or I not use a script? The real question should be, how can I use scripts in a way that help my team to be more authentic, more present and more successful and more engaging with their customers. Because if you don't use scripts right, there is a real danger that your people are going to come across as robotic and impersonal, and that you're going to lose that authenticity that makes your team special. So really, not just deciding to use a script or not use a script isn't the big question. The bigger question is how to do it in a way that's impactful. So let me say that there are a lot of pros. So we talked about some of the cons, and I want to be really authentic about the pros too before I talk about how to use script. So here's some of the pros about using scripts. One, it actually will allow your sales team to be more present and to listen more fully to their customers. That might sound counterintuitive, but how many times have you been listening to somebody and you're listening, and as you're listening, you're thinking through, what is my response? How am I going to answer this question? How am I going to counter this? That's what your salespeople are doing oftentimes too. And when they're thinking about their response, they're missing opportunities to hear nuances in what the customer is saying. The beauty about having a script and having one that they know really well and are comfortable with is they don't have to spend as much time thinking about what it is that they want to say. They already know. It's been decided, so they can then be more present to the customer instead of worrying about deciding what to say. It also increases the confidence that your salespeople have. It eliminates some of that, I don't know what to say, procrastination, like, oh, I want to go talk to this customer, I'm going to call this customer, but I don't know what to say. If you could eliminate that, that is a starting obstacle that sometimes keeps people stuck. When you're delivering your message with confidence, it gives you more authority. And then another thing that's really important is it allows you to test your messaging and systematize what you're doing. And this is really important. If you hit a sales slump, and we're going to talk more about that next week, it's hard to know exactly what to do to start getting different results, what you need to adjust. When you're using a set of scripts, you can make adjustments to those scripts and measure, do we get a better response rate? Do we not? If everyone's out there just saying whatever they want to say, there's no way to really measure what's working or not working. It's hard to know, really, is this message landing if you're not measuring it? Those are some of the pros of using scripts. Like I talked about before, it's not really a pro versus con debate. The question that we really need to be asking is, how do we use scripts more effectively? So one is that your scripts are customized to your client. So there's a great tool that I use all the time called Crystal Knows, and it's a personality profile that pulls people's personality profiles from their LinkedIn profiles. It's pretty amazing. And it has some scripts in there actually as well, but the scripts are customized based on the personality type. Why I say that is that your script is a starting point. Not every sales conversation that's using the same script is going to sound the exact same. The how that you deliver that message is going to vary, but the message should stay consistent. This isn't just a sales thing. This is communications 101. When I was doing public relations, we were always working on key messages. What are our top 3 key messages? What messages do we want to get in every interview? What are the messages that we're measuring that got picked up? When you have your set of key messages, then you can adjust those messages to your particular client and to that particular situation, but the message and the core of what you're saying stays static. The most important thing to use scripts effectively is to recognize that script is a starting point, and the script needs to be customized for your potential clients so that it speaks in their language, so that you're delivering it in a way where they can hear it. It also needs to be customized for your team member. If you're saying something in a way that is like, oh my gosh, I would never say it like that, it's not going to come across as inauthentic. So what I always say is come up with the script, have your core scripts, then have your sales team go through and customize that script, keeping in the key messages and the key areas that you want to make sure that you're hitting, but have them adjust that script for themselves. Write it out so it speaks in their language. Where I always say things like, awesome. There's certain words that I just use all the time. And when I'm writing scripts for my clients, a lot of my clients don't use those languages. So we don't want to keep them in there because they're not going to be able to deliver it with confidence and authenticity. So that's the key thing is you provide the script that's the starting point. with the key messages, with the things that need to get pulled out every single time, but then give each person on your team the opportunity to review the script and make it their own. Make sure they're delivering that script in a way that's still true to the heart of it. That's where they've got to, as a team, okay, what does the script sound like for you? How are you going to make this script personal? So they each get to do it, share it, but make sure that it's staying true to the heart of the message. Then they need to memorize it. This is where you're going to get a lot of pushback. Like, oh, I've got the general idea. But the thing about memorization is it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. When you have it memorized, when you know it so well that you can just repeat it in your sleep 100 times a day without looking at anything, you have the confidence to be fully present with your customers. It allows you to actually then make those adjustments to make the script work for your client more quickly and more effectively. So you want to make sure that you're memorizing the core of the script once it's been customized for each individual team member. Here's what I always say. The effective use of a script graduates your team to not needing a script. You're always going to utilize your key messages, have your key selling points, but once you've mastered the script, then the script's there in the back of your mind and you have the freedom and flexibility to use it in the way that is going to resonate most with your customers. So again, the key isn't that everybody has the exact same script, that they're reading verbatim the exact same way in every situation, that when a client asks a question, they don't get a robotic answer, but the heart of the message stays the same. And that's really important when you're testing out, is this the right message? So maybe you don't have a message problem, maybe you have a targeting problem, or maybe you don't have a targeting problem and it is a messaging problem. You can't solve these problems when you're in a sales slump if you don't have the scripts and the systems in place. So to summarize this week's episode, yes, you want to use a script. There is danger when you use scripts if they're used ineffectively, that they're going to be used in a way that's very robotic and inauthentic and really cut down on the true conversations between your team and your customers. But when they are used as a foundation for how we talk about our product, how we talk about our service, how we share what we do, how we answer certain questions, and they are customized both for the individuals on your team and for your individual customers, they are going to help you have more compelling sales conversations. So we've got some great script templates that you can download. There's some different ones. There's some email ones. There's some phone conversation ones. There's some scripts for different scenarios. You're going to want to tweak and adjust these scripts so that they work for you and your team. But this way, you're not starting from scratch. One of the biggest things that keeps people stuck is feeling like they don't know what to say. So we want to just eliminate that roadblock. There's no reason to think that. You can use these scripts as a starting point, but then go in and have your team customize and adjust them so when they're delivering that message, it's in a way that is authentic for them. And then next week, we're going to be talking about what you can do when you hit a sales slump and how you can get out of it as quickly as possible. In the meantime, if you loved this episode, go give us a 5-star review on iTunes and make sure to subscribe so you get our latest updates, our latest episodes delivered as soon as they're available. And we'll see you next week.